Welcome to the Riff. Today, Jeremy and Justin sit down to talk about making decisions. They also talk about circuses, Benjamin Franklin T-scales, Shania Twain, and just flipping a coin to make a decision. If you were trying to decide on whether or not to listen to the whole episode, I would say listen to all of it and then decide. That's funny. Thanks for listening.
Welcome to another episode of The Riff, and I'm excited because Justin,
yes,
it's been a while since the two of us have been able to just riff.
I know. I've missed you.
I love you too.
No, I said I missed you. Yeah, this is.
What did you think I said?
No.
That's what I said back.
I was just saying.
That's what I said.
Totally.
I said me too.
Love you too. Yeah.
That's weird.
No,
Anyway, it's good to have you here joining us if you're still listening. And Justin, do we have any updates from our sponsorship search committee?
Yeah, the update is 0. So as you were gone, I worked, I would say day and night on finding a sponsor.
Yeah.
And I am sad to say I found no one.
I'm sad to hear it because that was your one job while I was gone.
I know. That's
cool though.
But effort, I gave it.
That does not surprise me.
I know. Thank you.
Does not surprise me.
Thank you.
I knew it was going to be a competency thing, not an effort thing.
Thank you.
So, well, welcome. I forgot. Welcome to the Riff.
Yes. Welcome to the Riff.
It's
good to have
we
you.
can just riff. We can just do this the whole time.
I know. We got 30 minutes.
Today is not going to be have any content. So we're just gonna catch up. So.
How are you?
I am glad to be back. So did you miss me?
Week 1, no.
Okay.
Week 2, a little bit.
Okay.
Week 3, yes. But then week 4, not really. So it was a roller coaster for me.
See, I was afraid of that. I thought I definitely need to be gone more than 2 weeks.
But not further than that.
Okay.
So there's a limit there. You got to hit the sweet spot. But I'm glad you're back.
All right. Well, I'm glad to be back
So
too.
today we're talking about
decision making.
Decision making.
Yeah, because we couldn't figure out what we were going to talk about today. So we're like, let's just make a decision, right? And they're like, let's just talk about that. How do we go about making decisions?
Here's the deal. I think it's an extremely important thing to talk about because I think that it can be applied to anything, right? So it can be applied to a business, an organization, a church, a family, anything, right? So I think it's going to be fun. I also have a couple of sneaky questions in there that I'm going to hit you with. I've already thought of them. They're right here.
I like it.
All right.
Well, and again, like you said, with decision making, what I'm thinking through is some of the biggest opportunities in life that are in front of us. We have to make some of the toughest decisions we'll ever make. So I think one of the ways to kick this open as we kind of talk about our story, maybe, and as other people think about theirs, is is there a time that you can think back on that you're like, okay, I had to make a big decision that now looking back on it was big and scary decision at the time. Now looking back, you're really glad you made the decision. Mm-hmm. Can you think of a time like that? And I'll think of it.
Working here.
Think of one, so I want to start
working
with you.
here.
Okay, what would that look like?
Okay, so we were in a season of life where I traveled a lot with a job that
you were in a carnival.
I was okay. Let's back up.
Your family ran a carnival.
Okay, my family is circus folk. Okay,
a circus.
Yeah, there is a huge difference between carnival folk and circus folk.
Okay. To the outside world, there's not.
Wow, I'm just saying.
Keep going.
That's not what I toured with or traveled with.
Okay,
I worked in production. Traveled a lot. There were bands.
Not exclusively
concerts,
circuses.
Not exclusively circuses, but I would frequent them when they came into town because they are my family.
Yes.
Okay. But that's not who I traveled with. But I'm gone. I'm gone a ton. My wife and I, we decided that doesn't work for a marriage or for the marriage that we wanted. So we decided to move to Nashville. And that's the decision we made, right?
And what were you gonna do there? Production.
I had a couple of ins. My father had he owned a business here in the area and had a lot of different people in that space that were connections. So
you do like big production for all the big concerts that were coming to town. But truth or false, did you also write some of Shania Twain's lyrics?
True.
Because that's the rumor.
True.
Yes.
No, false. I wish.
Okay.
I wish.
That's a rumor I started, but yeah.
Man,
so you were thinking, okay, I'm going to do this, but I'm going to do it stationary.
Can you imagine Feel Like a Woman and I wrote that?
That's why I asked the question.
I love that
because
song.
Yes, I
but
can.
I do like it. I do. Yeah. I didn't write anything. Yeah. But yes, we decide we're going to Nashville. We were in North Point as volunteers. We hung out. I loved what North Point was doing. I never grew up really in church. I never really wanted to work at a church. And the leader of the creative department, his name was Jeff, came to me and was like,
Mary, did you know Jeff? For those who have been here a long time,
That's
right?
right. That's exactly right. Old Jeff May. And
if you haven't been here for more than 12 years, don't worry about it.
And he said, what would you think about doing what you're going to do in Nashville and you just stay here and do it here? I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. Well, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. And that's the first time I remember, at least within our marriage, that we had to walk through a decision, right? Yeah. And it wasn't an easy, like, well, this is what we should do. And this is my sneaky question, because I think decision making, I think you can get wrapped up. You talk a lot about being called. You talk about, I'm going to get into that because I've got some questions for you on that. But that was kind of in our season where we're like, well, what are we called to?
Yeah.
And that's the first time I wrestled with that, where I'm like, I don't feel like I'm called. So then I'm like, I don't feel like I should even work at a church now because I don't feel like I'm called to it, right? But I kind of want to do it. I kind of want to try it. So we made a pros and cons list and
a Benjamin T. Franklin scale, right? I think that's what they call it. Ben T. Franklin scale.
No idea what you're talking about right now.
Well, it's a pro-con list in the biz. I think that's it.
All right, we'll look it up.
Our research team. Do we have a research team either?
Let me check.
So we don't.
No,
we don't have a sponsor or a research team.
No fact checkers here.
Okay, well, that's good.
Yeah,
so let's just go
Benjamin T. Franklin scale.
Yeah, I think it's a T scale. A Franklin scale, a Franklin Graham scale. Anyway,
it was a pros and cons list.
Yeah,
and North Point had more pros, and that's it. So we were like, hey, let's give this a year. So that's literally what we said. Our decision is we're going to give it a year. We'll just see what it does.
Okay,
that's 12 years ago.
What point in the journey were you like, okay, I think this is vibing?
I don't know if there was ever an aha moment. Okay. I think it never felt not right. If that makes sense, right? Yeah. And I don't know how long I'm here either. Like that's kind of, and I kind of got comfortable with the calling thing, especially as you walk through it. And again, I'm going to ask you some questions on it, but I was able to put language to it. Okay. And I think it gave me a better sense of comfort within that gave me a better sense of comfort with the decision making and the decision that we made. Because then we walked into a lot of other decisions, right? Do we have kids? A lot of her pieces. Do you quit this job? Do you do this job? A lot of pieces, right? So I'm guessing, through marriage, through that relationship, there's been a lot of decision making, right? Right. So yeah, that's the first one though that comes to my mind. That was like a pretty pivotal point in my life, not just for the decision that her and I made to stay here, to be a part of North Point, but kind of a decision of the calling piece, the I don't know piece. So it was very interesting for that season. So yeah, that's the first one that come to my mind.
Yeah. I think careers. Career seems like a big one. I think as we go through life, almost every decision feels like a major decision. But looking back, a lot of them are big time relationship when the stakes are high, or your career. I look at a time for us. We worked at a church. We were youth pastors, and we just didn't like our job. It just didn't seem like it was the one thing we needed to do to feel fulfilled. And there were some fulfilling things in it, but we just had this, whether it was curiosity of doing something different, suspicion that maybe there was a bigger scale to do more of our passion or more of our purpose or whatever it might be. So we had that back and forth, Leanne and I, of do I quit my job to pursue going out and starting school assemblies and speaking? And, I had done a little of that, but it's easy to do a little of that when I had a job and a buddy says, hey, can you speak at my event? And so for us, it's that intentional process of trying to figure out, okay, what are the pros, what are the cons? Then there's this gnawing intuitional part of it, like, man, this is what I really want to do. Is it a smart deal? And finally it was, hey, let's just make a decision. And, and I think whether it's a big decision, whether it doesn't have a lot of stakes, a lot of it comes down to choice. And we can over spiritualize a lot of our decisions, especially when you talk about the word calling. If a decision's tough to make and then you throw in a whole spiritual layer to it that also is complicated, it could be really confusing to find clarity. And so that's what I wanted to talk about in this episode is how do we make the best decisions? What role does clarity, what role does confusion have in these decisions? What are some things we should look for? What are some things we should be afraid of? What are some things we shouldn't be afraid of? So, anyway.
So do you have a process? So you are faced with a dilemma or a decision to make. Do you have a process to walk through that you use regularly, or do you just kind of walk into those as they happen?
So I would say I want to be an opportunistic type of leader, right? Is what I would describe my aspiration, even more so than intentional. Like just that sense of, okay, what presents itself today? How does that feel? So that's the way I'm wired. That's not better or worse. You seem to be more, let's think through this. What's the best decision? It's probably why we work together, and that's why we're miserable, but it's probably good for the organization. But I really feel like there's two things. You got the intuitive leader, you got the intentional leader, and they're both very important. And I think an intuitive leader it's quick. Okay, let's make a quick decision based on our hunch, what feels good. And I know you got a lot of that in you as well. Our organization needs us to also think intentionally. So you got intuitive and you got intentional. Intentional is a slow process. Let's weigh it out. Let's consider it. It's more logical. Intuitive is more emotional. I love to float in the intuitive lane. Healthy organizations have both. And they're totally different. And everyone who's listening leans more intuitive or intentional. And they're different. So an intuitive decision-making is fast and it's a gift from God. For if you're doing it in the right way. If I'm being chased by a tiger, I don't have time to be intentional.
Do you know that? Have you been chased?
Yes. Yeah. Fortunately, there was a barrier between us. Okay. Otherwise, honestly, I don't think I would have gotten away.
Wow. Was it a zoo or a circus?
It was a carnival.
Stop.
I don't know the difference.
We'll walk through it.
Okay.
I've got a book.
So when I'm being chased by a tiger, I don't have time to be intentional. When I'm betting on the tigers, I don't have money to be intuitive, right? So you see the difference? No, I've not bet on the tigers. I'm a pastor.
Yes,
You always bet on the Chiefs if you're a pastor. Okay, so bottom line is think about that, is if I'm doing something, for money, intuitive isn't always going to be your best bet. If I'm doing something for my own well-being, maybe I don't have the time to be intentional, but they're both important, right? So when you're making a major decision, what's kind of funny is the story you share is very intentional. You and your wife sit down, okay, let's think about this, what's best, what happened, this. And in my story, it is kind of like, okay, hey, and it was like Leanne was being very intentional. Okay, what about this? And silly things that aren't important, like insurance, finances. And I'm just like, God will provide, right? Be faithful, which is just well-intentioned spiritual language to say, I got a feeling, right? And that's all right. They're both gifts from God. And I think if you don't have time and you're out of time and you got a deadline, don't worry if you don't have the intentional process. Just go with your intuitive, just lean into your intuitive. If you have time, understand that your intuitive decision-making isn't seeing the full picture. So the process for me is to at least recognize first, what do I intuitively feel like I want to do? And then intentionally, if I have the time, let that either reinforce and help me. Does that help me? So part of the process is, what's my gut? That's my intuitive. Okay, what do I want to do? Realizing it's not always right. Often it might be, but then if I have time, let's weigh it out, right? Kind of as you described, let's weigh it out and then say, does that change my gut? Okay, this might be my gut, but when I hear the other side of the story, when I hear these other options, okay, what part of that is exciting to me, that first one? And then how can I lean in and mind that exciting portion of this decision, but do it with a better plan, right? So you have that in mind. Then I also feel like another process is, if you have the opportunity, talk to somebody who has wisdom, and not general wisdom. I mean, someone who has in their past success in the area you want to have future success, specifically with this decision. So what I want to do is I want to bring my gut and bring my fears from the intentional part, and I want to throw that to someone who's been there, done that, if I had the opportunity, and then just listen to what they say. And then here's how I listen. Is I don't do what they say. Just because they have a voice doesn't mean they have a vote, but I want them to have a voice because it might change my vote. And so that's why it's important to have people in your life. If the only really close friends in your life are people who have the shared experience and shared perspective and shared age and shared stage, I think we're missing out, because most of life's biggest opportunities involve a decision, and the best decisions involve people who have been in a different stage than you are currently. And so I feel like, okay, what's your gut say? What does the wisdom say? What do outside communities say? And then end of the day, you just say, okay, with all of that, I ask myself, if God were speaking to me, and this is going to get probably confusing to some of our listeners, so help us make this really clear. I do want to understand God speaks to us, but I have never heard an audible voice of God. So when I say that, I feel like God speaks to us through wisdom, through gut, through intellect. And then as we all shake that together, I say, God, will you guide my steps? And when I say that, I mean, God, if you change my gut on this, and I'm going to be obedient to that. I'm not gonna force open a door. I'm gonna give you a very specific awareness in my life to change my gut. Please change my gut. If the wisdom is neutral, if my intellect is neutral, my community is neutral, and my gut is excited, I'll say, God, you can change the gut, and I'll be obedient. If not, God, this is where I'm headed. You can close a door. I'm giving you an opportunity to speak, to steer, to give me different guidance. But at this point, I'm going to go forward unless you tell me otherwise. So if it's unclear to me after I've done all that, just lean in my gut.
How would you explain then maybe misinterpreting or hearing something that's not there? Like how do you know that it's like this like burning desire that God's putting in you, or heartburn? Right. Like how?
Yeah, great question. I think trying to catch God's will for your life is like watching a rec league softball player catch a fly ball. Okay, like I think I got it. Oh no, it's over my head, right? You're like, it's a circus watching them try and catch.
Yeah, you used it right on this one.
Okay, yeah. Okay,
you nailed it.
So sometimes that's the will of God for my life. I'm like, I think I'm tracking it. No, okay, I'm gonna need backup on this. So how do I determine that? Is again, some of it's personality, and a lot of times we can spiritualize our personality. And so if you're more of a logistics or logical left brain thinker, God speaks to you through that, right? He makes things more obvious and more clear. I'm right brain, right? So it's going to be a little bit, all over the map, and I can spiritualize that. What I have to do is understand, okay, I want wisdom. I want outside of my own perspective to speak into this. And then what I try and do is I give it some time. Say, okay, does my excitement for this decision wax or wane, right? Does it build? So anything I can convince myself that this is the right decision today. But I like to sleep on it a few different days. And that's what I like to say, even if we're interviewing someone for a job, say, hey, sit on this for a few days. If this grows, maybe God's in it. And when I say maybe God's in it, maybe as you grow, you're talking to more people, you're thinking it, you got your intuitive, you have time to be intentional, you're processing it with the important people in your life. Does it begin to build more energy towards, I think I want to do this? And if you are open to God slamming a door and you don't sense him totally slam the door feeling like, no, this is a wrong thing. Like this is sin. Like meaning, for example, making a decision, should I cheat on my wife? Okay. You might have all the intuitive desire to do that, but if you're opening your heart up to what God has to say, is to be like, no. Okay. So obviously you don't block out what God's saying, but if it's not a moral decision, it's not a spiritual decision, it's a location decision, it's a financial decision, it's a parenting decision, and you don't see a black and white, a lot of times it's going to be up to that. So I just say, hey, let it sit for a few days. What grows? And then I would say this, if you're in a good position in life, never make a change unless it's an easy decision. If it's a tough decision and I'm in a good spot, it's an easy decision. I'm not doing it. If it's an easy decision, I'm in. But so like right now, if someone said, hey, Jeremy, here's this opportunity I want you to really consider to spend the next 10 years of your life. You've been doing this at North Point for 10 years. Consider doing this the next 10 years. And I'm like, that's a tough decision. Easy decision. No, because I love what God's doing in my life. And until something else is like, boom, that's an easy decision. And I think that's true. I think that process could be true for all of us in a lot of things, is if you're in a good spot, keep rolling with it, be open to something new, but only when after you've done all this, it grows in excitement. And now if you're in a spot that you're not excited about, like, man, it's been 3 years, you're still renting out a room in a neighbor's garage that, has got a dysfunctional life, and you're like, get me out of here, and you have a decision to come, it might be a tough decision, you still go with it, right? Because you're not happy with your current situation. So if you're not happy with the current situation, just roll the dice, do the intentional, intuitional deal, ask some people, and then what does it hurt, right? You think, okay, what are the stakes involved, and you make quick decisions. So,
and I think something that you've talked about previously as well is not necessarily even like are you in a good situation to just stay in comfort? Right. You kind of walked through something in All Staff that you kind of did you did a Venn diagram with purpose and passion and proficiency and all of these.
I did a Venmo picture. I asked you guys to give me a Venmo.
Oh, we totally.
No, you thought it was Venn diagram with passion and purpose and proficiency.
Yes. No, it was I'm so sorry, man. Okay. I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
But there's that piece to it, to where I don't. You might correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I hear you saying, if you're comfortable, just stay. Right? And because I think that a good space is going to stretch you. It's going to grow you, right? And I think that's what you talked about with that Venn diagram of you might be in a great spot, but is it the spot for you? Right?
Yeah.
And I think that what you did with that, with the purpose and passion proficiency, I think that helps people put language to, I like where I'm at, but I'm not passionate about it.
Right.
Or I'm not proficient, right? But I might be comfortable. It might not be toxic.
Right.
It's better than where I was, right? Which is a step. So kind of walk through that on how you use that. Because honestly, I've had a lot of conversations with staff after that talk where I think it stirred people's brains in a way that's like, oh, I can put this into okay, well, now this is making more sense. Right. Well, yeah, I would. So kind of walk through that.
So I would start by saying there's nothing unspiritual about being comfortable. And there's nothing spiritual about being comfortable. So I think it can be spiritually neutral. Now, when it comes to comfortable in my faith and comfortable in my ability to try and have an impact in my community, that's a different matter. But when it comes to life, things are good. Family's doing well. My career is fine. I don't have a toxic environment. Great. Okay. But when you're making a decision, I think that's a good grid to even make decisions. Is that Venn, the intersecting circles, that Venn diagram, those three, like you said, you got your passion. List out, what are the things I'm passionate about, the things that I just love doing that adds life to me when I do these things. Then the second circle is purpose. What are the things that when I do this, it lights somebody else up, right? And then proficiency, what are the things I'm good at? If we make those three lists, make them circles, then the sweet spot is, what do I do that lights me up in a way that lights others up, and I think I'm good enough that someone's going to pay me to do, okay? If I can figure that out, right, then man, there's going to be this fire in what I do. And so for me, I think that's that intuitive, but putting some intentional listing out where it makes sense. Like, okay, for you is for you have this opportunity looking back in Nashville to be part of making this huge impact in the production scene, doing what you do. Well, that's great, and that might be a season in your life, and that's awesome. But probably as you think through it intellectually, intuitively, you're like, okay, my passion is, man, this, I feel like I could do it in a way that will have a bigger purpose, right? Now, could you do that in a non-Christian environment, non-church environment? Of course you can. But the ultimate thing is what helps you make a decision is you see what you want to do has a purpose and you're good at it. And so when you could answer those questions, go for it. Mm-hmm. So I would say those of you who have a job and you're considering a job move, don't do it just for money. Because if you do it just for money, that's not going to light you up well. Now, it doesn't mean you got to stay for less money, because that doesn't necessarily light you up either. But what you got to chase is that intersection of passion, purpose, doing it for a reason, and being able to provide for what your needs are.
Well, I think as we went through that exercise, it solidified for me where I'm like, the whole word calling. So I'm going to ask you some questions on that, right? And my decade journey of like, do I have one? Where is it, Lord? Right? So there's, through that entire thing, that when I wrote everything down, I never wrote a position.
Right.
I never wrote like executive pastor is my belt. It's
right.
not like there was no position on there. There was no like what you would think or what I would think, what a calling would mean, right? Or a job it was all very like mushy.
Yeah.
Like dad was on there. Husband was on there. Build teams were on. Like it's all of these pieces. And I think you kind of walk through that, and just learning from you in the past years, it's that whole idea of you find out what those are, and you can do those pretty much in any setting.
Yes.
Right? Like, so kind of walk through that, walk through your idea of the word calling. And I've never met anybody that, I don't know, is not a Jesus follower that was like, my calling is. I do think it might be a church word. I don't know if it is or not. Is it? I don't know.
It is a church word in this culture, but originally it wasn't, because the word vocation comes from the same word vocal, right? So the whole word of your career came out of this sense of this is what you were called onto earth to do, right? So I think calling a calling is why you're here. What is it about you? You are a gift to this world. Now, if you think you're a gift to this world, your next gift to this world is humility. Okay, but as a general rule, you are a gift. You were born with a purpose, right? And God's given you gifts. You've developed gifts by the grace of God. You've had people that shape and whatnot, but all those gifts have a purpose. Arrows got to go out, right? So we talk about that a lot at North Point, but you've got gifts. When you figure out how your gifts are a blessing to a broken situation, that's purpose. And if you can figure out how to do that with the majority of your time, which in our culture, most people work, right? Then man, if you can figure out a profession that allows you to do something you're good at in a way that benefits others, awesome. But your profession doesn't have to do that. But I think ultimately when what you do with most of your time allows you to do something more significant than just bring in money, awesome. However, if your profession allows you to bring in a ton of money, and with that is your purpose to be able to fund other things or whatever. But bottom line is, I don't believe a calling is what I do. My calling isn't to be a pastor, because that's a profession. That is a role. It's not my identity. A calling is about your identity. It's who you are. What are your gifts? What are your passions? What lights you up? And what, when you do it right, lights up those around you. For you, building teams is a big part of it. Dad, father, these things are a big part of it. So when you do that well, other people are blessed. So your calling isn't being executive pastor at North Point. That's just your career, but your career is a canvas upon which you paint your calling. Your calling is to build teams. So when you think of I think of for you, there's a lot of things that you're good at that you can do, okay? You're one of the best mixers, producers, around. So you can do that and probably get paid really well to do that. And that might be great. And you got to figure out purpose. But bottom line is when your calling isn't to be an executive pastor, but why that was probably a really good decision for for you is because when you let North Point be your career, it allowed you now to build teams in such a way that we can reach a whole lot of people for an eternal impact. And so all of a sudden now that's a fire that's tough to replace with even a higher salary or whatever it might be. Now, that doesn't mean that's what you're going to do for the rest of your life, because if all of a sudden now you pull out that canvas and now it's a new canvas, as long as you can figure out a way to do what you're good at and do it in a way that benefits others, then that career isn't your calling. It's simply a canvas upon which we paint our calling. I've done the same thing. For me, whether it was a youth pastor, as a youth pastor role, I had the opportunity to speak life and encouragement. My calling, one of my things that I feel like I'm born to do is encourage those, who can use it. And so as a youth pastor, I was able to do that. And then when I decided, I feel like I want to do a different thing here, this intuitively, but I felt like I don't want to cheat my passion and my purpose. I actually, though, feel like I can do it in a different scale by doing school assemblies. And when people would come to me and they would be like, when do you think you're going to get back into the ministry? I wanted to punch their throat, like for real. But that's not my purpose, is to punch their throat, nor is it my gift.
Do you think anybody?
Nor is it my gift. No. So, but my fear, my frustration was this. No. I was born to be a voice of encouragement. And now I'm able to do this at 100 public schools a year and then 100 other events a year. I'm doing it on a different scale than I'd ever done it before. I'm neck deep in my purpose and passion and being able to help people. And so when you tell me I'm not in the ministry because I don't get a paycheck from a church, drove me nuts. That's why, and I say this all the time at North Point, not as a way to because I don't care about my job, but my purpose in life is not to be a pastor at North Point. My purpose in life is to be a voice of encouragement to a community. And that's why I love North Point. That's why I love my job. I'm able to do that. There will be a day where I'm not the pastor at North Point, and guess I'm going to be neck deep doing, encouraging something. And honestly, if there was something that tomorrow there was a canvas that was presented that says, Jeremy, you got to consider, would this be an opportunity for you to do what you're born to do and have an impact at a whole different phase or a different level? I would be disobedient to not consider it. Right? That's just the way your calling works. So my calling is I hold my career loosely, I hold my role loosely. And then all that back to decision making. Decision making it goes back to when I say intuitive or intentional. Intuitive is, what is your gut? What lights you up? What do you think will light others up? You could kind of hunch it, but then be intentional and say, do you have evidence that you're good at it? Would anyone ever pay you to do it? Is this sustainable? When you have the ability and the time to put those together, then make decisions. Now, not all of it's career. Some of it's just a decision of should we sell our home? I think a lot of those decisions are overrated. Do the intentional, do the gut, roll the dice. Right? If the stakes aren't super high with eternity, who cares? I just don't think God gives a ton of weight to every decision we make. And I'm not saying God doesn't care about you, because he cares about the sparrow. But just make a decision. Just run.
I 100% agree. It changed 9 years ago for us, for me and my wife, when we had our first kid. And I think parenting showed me that truth. One of the things we say to Lily and Ella all the time when they can't make a decision, we always say, babe, you got to make one or someone's going to make one for you, right? It's going to happen. The decision's going to happen. Right now you can choose or someone else will, right? And I just think, I'm like, that's life, right? Like, just choose.
Yeah.
Like, exactly what you're talking, right? With those pieces, with everything that you know, you've got tools to make a decision. So just do it.
Yeah.
Because someone's going to make one, right? It might not be you if you wait. So
I want to say one more thing about how to make a decision. Let's say you've intentionalized it and you're like, I don't know. If you've been intentional and plotted it and Benjamin Franklin T'd it, all these things, and you still don't know, does your gut lean? And if they're the same, maybe you got a choice. Yeah. If one of them leans stronger than the other, it looks like that's your decision. If you don't know, do the old coin. And I believe the coin test is great. Not heads this, tails that. That's stupid. Just flip the coin, and by the time you catch it, you have to yell out what you want. Like, we do that for Wendy's, or Chick-fil-A. Because
you have to decide between those two?
Yeah.
Wow.
Spicy nuggets,
Wow.
fresh nuggets, you know? So, but seriously, the coin flip test, not what lands determines it, but in the air, yell out what you want to do. And now when the stakes are high and you've done your homework and you're still on the fence to find out what you want to do, try the coin test. Flip a coin in the air. Before you catch it, you have to yell out what's in your gut. I do that with my family. They freak out. They're like, no, because they don't want to know what they really believe. But then I'm like, no, we're going to do the coin test. They flip it and they scream out and they're like, I've had Sydney do this and Sydney start crying because she's very intentional, but then her gut comes out in the air and she yells it out. And she's like, what? I don't know that I want, but she just discovered what she really wanted. So this is a wealth of information for this show. So some people today are going to make major decisions in the time it takes to catch a coin.
I hope so.
It'll reveal your gut.
They're going to need to.
Yeah.
All right. Do you want to make a decision right now? Should we?
I don't know.
Keep going, or should we?
I think
end?
intentionally we're over time.
Yes.
My gut says stay.
Just
My
as
intention says our followers are waning. So let's leave them wanting more.
All right. Let's end it here.
Hey, thanks for being with us today on another episode of The Riff. Excited about what's coming up. We got a lot coming up with some great guest information as well for North Pointers. So thanks so much for listening. It's a big deal to us. And we'll catch you soon.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Riff. We'll have a brand new episode every week, wherever you find podcasts.